it's going to be... I'll ask it anyway. Why would someone go for the grind when you can hammer in more work and decrease the risk of failing by spreading the stress over the week?
Start a new video and we'll answer it while we're answering that. While we're looking at the video.
All right. We got Mel Sitnick.
Actually, Mel's a good example in this, right? So she has some pretty grindy reps, and I think the grind is the best thing for you, right? It's because there comes a point in training where it's not just, weight on the bar and, you just keep adding it, and kind of like the honeymoon phase. The end of the LP is rough, right? And making gains. This is, I think Nick Delgadillo put this in a really good example, is that you don't see that many people squatting heavy weights, right? But you see people running marathons, you see people climbing Mount Everest and all this shit. But squatting heavy and continuously making your lifts increasingly heavy over years and years of training is the hardest thing probably to do almost in anything, right? If you don't have that mindset of going in there and day after day just keep training, busting your ass, and accomplishing things through grinding, you'll never get there.
I think most people would be very surprised if you're using RAR or RPE or whatever, auto-regulatory system you're using. You would be very surprised how inaccurate those are for people, even people who have been like very seasoned lifters. Like with the right motivation, you're going to be able to pull out way more reps than you would otherwise. And there's a lot of literature about this where they'll like socially isolate athletes before performance. They'll have them do a Sudoku puzzle beforehand. They'll play loud music or scary stuff, and they'll be like, okay, now go do a competition event. And it suffers just as much inversely as like social benefits. Like if you have people cheering you on, if you have the research team asking you to do more reps, you'll be able to do more. RPE and RIR can be very inaccurate for a lot of people, like tremendously inaccurate, especially people who are coming into a scenario where they haven't done any training and then now they're attempting to do 9 hard sets of something a week. So from like a semantics or theoretical argument, we could definitely approach that as like, okay, maybe there are better things to do than attempting to like keep things at a super high intensity, but you would be giving up a lot of intensity specific adaptations and throwing the practical portion to the winds. Most people have absolutely no idea what their capacity or potential is. I've had people who tell me who stop at rep 3 of a set when it was flying and it looked like they had easily 5 more in the tank, but to them they'll think they don't have that capacity in them. There are plenty of people who think that, I'm sure Alex Mitchell deals with this all the time, they'll never deadlift 100 pounds, but that 60-year-old guy, maybe after a few months of training, he's deadlifting 255, and for him it's wildly past his expectations. If you ask that guy what a grind is or what RPE or RRR that was, he would have no fucking idea. You have to remember the human element to coaching with these things.
Yep, and also there's Rip always talks about this, to the point where it's kind of a trope, but there really is something that needs to be said about the development of the portions of the brain that make you do difficult or hard things, and the grind is such an important piece of that. I don't think we have the literature in our academic base to show what that why there is an effect on what I assume is the frontal cortex's ability to inhibit signals from the limbic system, something along those lines, something like that. But if we were to do a study on people's ability to adhere to a routine or adhere to a habit, express discipline, tamp down things that they'd rather not do, like smoking, like eating sugar, whatever it is, I bet that, or I would hypothesize that if you had people go through LP, grind their ass off at the end, and then had them try to do that again after LP, you would see them then be better able to keep in line with their habits and their first order desires. And I think that's something that everyone as a coach has experienced, at least phenomenologically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, generally, and I'm sure, I don't know how much problem people have this in in-person gyms. I'm sure Chase's adherence or compliance rates are virtually 100%, just as the nature of the climate in the gym there. In-person gyms are amazing for that. But for online coaching, or I would say maybe assume people logging systems, like the starting strength logs, RTS logs, apps, all of that stuff, adherence either completely falls off and they stop the activity, or it gets better over time. as you are disciplined and as you're doing hard things, you're training your ability to be disciplined and do hard things, right? So like getting ahead of that hard phase for the sake of optimization. I mean, like, sure, if you want to be a weenie about it, but, you know, don't be a weenie. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and also you're eliminating an entire aspect of programming that you can use. You know, like there is when you have your high intensity, when you're doing your 5 RMs, your 1 RMs, your 3 RMs, all that kind of stuff. That's a knob that you can turn when you know, you've done your hypertrophy blocks or your whatever that is, whatever you were doing, and now that knob has been turned and it's turned all the way to 11. Now you can go back to your intensity phase or whatever you want to do, and you can reap gains that way. And for probably what'll be the final point on this is that you don't really know how strong you are. Really know how strong you are until you have lifted the absolute heaviest weight you could ever lift, right? During whatever phase, that's your measurement. That's how we know, okay, you were this strong, now you are this strong. It is a flawed measurement. We will never have an accurate measurement of actually how strong you are, but probably I think it's hard to argue that the best way to know how strong you are, the best measurement we have, is a 1 RM, or maybe you could argue for a 3 RM or a 5 RM.
Amen, sister. Amen. Mel's deadlift.